SpaceX, Falcon Heavy, go for launch.
10, 9,
All systems go. 3.
Set booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Supersonic.
Set boosters. Beacon.
ดูถ่ายทอดสดเล่นๆสำหรับคนที่ยังไม่นอนสำหรับคนที่ยังไม่นอน
Have landed.
Told me to.
Blame me.
Told me to.
Blame me. They're not fans, Dan. Sorry, dude. You should just stick to whatever it is you do in your free time, besides practicing your voices. Well, one person liked it. I think that's kind of a sympathy like, though.
There was 2 sympathy likes so far.
They liked it.
หายไปไหนแล้วถ่ายทอดสด
Dan, can you do a Kerbal accent? Dan just started playing Kerbal about a month ago.
Still have not made it to the Mun yet.
You have to just speak Spanish backwards. You know that's the real language of Kerbals?
No, I did not.
I wasn't talking to you, but that's interesting that you didn't know that. You do not do Gollum. Brad, you have something to say?
No.
Oh, thanks for coming.
ECS transition to helium started.
Multiple vehicles.
All right, we're at T-minus 50 minutes.
Time from a space exploration time frame just to see all that happening, and it's because of this nurturing of the environment being able to pull in a wider group of people who can contribute towards human spaceflight. It's a super cool time. On a deeply personal level, I'm really excited that my son is going to get a chance to see me launch into space. Being an astronaut has been a little bit of an abstraction thing for him because he's seen me do it in old videos, but he hasn't seen me do it for real. And so I'm excited for him to see this launch. I want to thank the entire Commercial Crew Program team that's worked together to get to this point where we've got vehicles in the launch pad ready to head to the International Space Station.
We're just over 49 and a half minutes away
ดู
from
เล่น
launch of the Falcon 9 carrying
เผื่อใคร
Dragon
ยัง
to the
ไม่นอน
space station. Right now, the launch director
ใครยัง
and
ไม่
the
อยาก
launch
นอน
team are preparing for a readiness for launch poll. In this poll, the 13 members of the launch team will electronically indicate a go for launch. This is also the go for propellant load. Now, we're going to hear that in a couple of minutes, so while we wait,
บริษั
we
ท
are
เอกชน
tracking you watching
ส่ง
from
มนุษย์
all
ขึ้น
over the
สู่อว
country.
กาศ
We're seeing large numbers of you logging on or
SpaceX
tuning in from coast to coast, as well as around the world. We want to know, is this your first time watching a launch
ส่ง
live?
นักบิน
If not, how many have you seen
นัก
before?
บินอวกาศ2
Tell
คน
us using the hashtag LaunchAmerica from your favorite social media website. As for me, this isn't my. Is this your first time watching a launch
ส่ง
live?
นักบิน
If not, how many have you seen
นัก
before?
บินอวกาศ
Tell
2 คน
us using the hashtag LaunchAmerica from your favorite social media website. As for me, this isn't my.
Space exploration time frame. I want to thank the entire commercial
Team will electronically indicate a go for launch. This is also the go for propellant load. Now we're going to hear that in a couple of minutes, so while we wait,
บริษัท
we
เอ
are
กชน
tracking you watching
ส่ง
from
มนุษย์
all
ขึ้น
over the
สู่อว
country.
กาศ
We're seeing large numbers of
exploration time frame. I want to thank the entire commercial
team clicks on whether they're go or no go. The launch director will then at T-minus 45 minutes summarize the end of the poll and will then provide instructions for the team. At the same time, we will begin getting ready for the crew access arm retraction, and we'll show you that on one of the screens that we've got up.
กำหนดปล่อย
Currently, we are
ตี
continuing to
3
monitor
ครึ่ง
the weather. The weather is still red. It is improving. We're looking at one cell between the radar
อีก
and the
นานอยู่เลย
pad.
เนี่ย
We're keeping our fingers crossed that conditions will improve,
ถ่ายทอด
but we're going to
แช่
be
ไว้ดีก
watching
ว่า
that for about another 15 minutes.
เดี๋ยวพอใกล้ๆแล้วค่อย
So
กลับ
it looks
กลับ
like
มา
we're
ดู
going to be good to begin propellant load once we hear the polls,
กำหน
but
ด
we
ปล่อย
still
ตี
have to
3
get the
33 นาที
get the range green so that we can actually do the launch in just 47 minutes from now. Let's listen
ใช้
to countdown then for a
จรวด
moment.
Falcon 9 ปล่อยฟลอริดาสถานีอวกาศศูนย์อวกาศเคนเนดีศูนย์อวกาศเคนเนดีใช้จรวด Falcon 9 บริษัท SpaceX นี่นักบินอวกาศเข้าไปเตรียมพร้อมอยู่ในนั่นแหละครูดากอนเรียกไอตัวหัวมันนะเรียกครูดากอน
Right now, coming up on 46 minutes, 10 seconds before launch.
Capsule.
Didn't hear any significant chatter coming over countdown 1.
Yes, launch director in the countdown net. Poll is complete, and we have a go to proceed with propellant load.
เนี่ย
Launch control, proceed with swing into crew arm.
เส้นมันทำไมขึ้นมา
Arming crew arm movement for T-minus 45 minutes.
เนี่ย45 นาที ถอยหลัง T-minus 45
A reminder in control room on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief CE or LD, and it will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting safety of the operation, operator shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operator shall also advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Remainder on fire alarm launch escape fire 4. Event of a fire alarm, key operators previously and proceed to launch abort.
นี่
For
ก็
urgent issues
ดู
affecting
เล่น
safety
ๆ
of
เผื่
the
อใคร
operation,
ยังไม่
operator
นอน
shall call hold on the countdown net. They'll be arming the launch escape system momentarily. Need all personnel, please stay in your seats from now through orbit insertion and Dragon separation.
ตี 3:30
Crew access arm retract has started.
And you've heard Mike Taylor, the SpaceX launch director, give instructions to the team. We've also just heard the call. The crew access arm retraction is underway. Great view from the camera inside the White Room as we see the arm moving away from the Dragon capsule. One of the major events necessary to get down to T0. The next one coming up will be arming of the escape system on the Dragon capsule.
ไอ้
Now, right now, the next
ไอ้ตรง
plan
หั
for
วนั่น
Falcon
เรียก
9, T-minus 35 minutes, we will begin
Dragon
loading
capsule
propellant onto the first and second stages. Now, currently, Falcon 9's looking good. Dragon's looking good. Will be arming of the escape system on the Dragon capsule.
ไอ้
Now, right now, the next
ไอ้ตรง
plan
หั
for
วนั่น
Falcon
เรียก
9, T-minus 35 minutes, we will begin
Dragon
loading
capsule
propellant onto the first and second stages. Now, currently, and we just continue to monitor the weather. Our team is getting constant updates. We're monitoring weather data sensors around the launch site, looking to make sure that we can get everything into the green
สภาพ
position
อากาศ
in 35 minutes. We will begin
Dragon
loading
capsule
propellant onto the first is how much rain we're going to get between now and liftoff.
รู้สึกว่าท้อง
Whether
ฟ้า
it's
มัน
just
ยังไม่
going
ค่อย
to be
แจ่มใส
mild
เท่าไหร่
precipitation that's within the rules for loading propellant. That's what the expectation is, but we're going to continue to watch that. So fingers crossed, but right now coming up at T-minus 43 minutes, 18 seconds and counting,
ท้อง
everything
ฟ้า
but
มัน
the
ยัง
weather's
ออก
go,
แดงๆ
and
อ
the
ยู่
weather
นะ
is trending in the right direction. So we've got our fingers crossed here.
เขากำลังลุ้นอยู่ว่า ดูท้องฟ้าเนี่ยท้องฟ้ายังครึ้มๆอยู่เลย
At this time, we're going to send it back over to Kennedy Space Center
ไม่รู้ว่าฝ
as
น
the
จะตก
action
หรือ
is
เปล่า
picking up on the launch pad.
Thanks, John I. Now that countdown clock is continuing to tick, and
อีก
we are
อีกนานเลย
42
อะ
minutes and 46
42
seconds
นาที
away
อะ
from launch. Now, as you just saw, the crew arm retracted. That
หลับ
is the
หลับก่อน
last major visual milestone before liftoff. And we should be hearing out on the net soon confirmation that the launch escape system is armed. When that happens, all 8 of the Super Draco throttle valves are opened, which means that those engines can ignite.
For section 7.
ทีนี้มีระบบหนีได้ด้วยนะ ถ้ามีปัญหานี่มันจะไอ้
So
ดา
that
กอน
means
แคปซูลตรง
those
หัว
8
มัน
throttle
อะ
valves are opened,
จะ
and if
จุด
those
ระเบิด
super
จรวด
heaters
ขึ้นไป
needed to fire in order for Dragon to escape off of the pad, they could.
And so things running just a little bit ahead of
ไอ้ตรง
schedule
หัว
right
มัน
now.
เป็นแคปซูลหนีได้ถ้าเกิดว่าไอ้จรวดถ้ามันมีปัญหา นี่ก็รอดูท้องฟ้าอย่างเดียวยังมืด
Now we just saw the crew access arm retract just a minute ago. We saw NASA astronauts Doug Hurley.
In 7.2, our visors are closed and we're arming the launch escape system.
So we just heard the astronauts confirm that they are about to arm the launch escape system. That happens just before fueling begins, which we expect to happen in just a couple of minutes. We saw Bob and Doug suit up a little over 3 hours ago. Then we watched them drive out to Launch Complex 39A. They were assisted by the SpaceX ground team with Crew Dragon ingress. That happened a little before 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then we saw the spacecraft hatch
บ่าย
close.
2 โมง
And again, just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract. We just heard that the crew armed the launch escape system. And in just a few minutes, we are going to hear the call that they have started propellant loading.
นี่นักบินอวกาศขึ้นเข้าไปรออยู่ข้างในแคปซูลแล้ว
Launch escape system is verified armed.
แคปซูล
So we just heard that verification that the launch escape system is armed.
We're switching to GN2.
มีเช็คไอ้ระบบ Run Escape System ช่วยหนีระบบช่วยมันบีบ
And we are going to send it
จุด
over
ระเบิ
to
ด
Hawthorne
เอา
to
ไว้หนี
take us
เวลา
through
มันมีปัญหา
liftoff loading. Jesse?
From the parachutes to the launch escape system, SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch vehicle ever flown. And joining us today, we
มี
have
ระบบ
SpaceX's
หนี
Nick
ออกมาได้นะ
Capone,
ถ้า
who
ระเบิด
was our
ถ้า
mission
จรวด
manager
มีปัญหา
for
นี่
our
มัน
inflight
สามารถ
aborts,
จะ
mission
แคปซูล
earlier this
จะ
year
ดีดอ
and
อกมาได้
currently works on the Starlink team.
จุดระเบิด
Thanks
ห
for
นีออก
joining
มาได้
us, Nick.
Hey Jesse, I'm here at the Launch and Landing Recovery Center with the recovery team and our Dragon Ground Operations team monitoring the launch.
Awesome. Can you tell us more about the critical safety features on this new version of Dragon?
Sure. So Dragon 2 was designed with long-term reuse and reliability in mind. So fundamentally, there are multiple layers of redundancy to any of the failure modes that we could conceive of, that NASA could conceive of when we were working to design and test this vehicle over the past few years. But in the event that we encounter an unforeseen failure mode or multiple failures which push us outside of our design space, Dragon also has backup systems and operational controls intended to keep Bob and Doug safe. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it today, but the launch system is the primary backup system that we have from the moment that the vehicle is here on being fueled all the way up until orbital insertion. At a high level, the launch escape system in the event of a major Falcon anomaly or emergency will terminate Falcon thrust, separate Dragon from Falcon, and it'll use Dragon's 8 Super Draco engines to quickly pull the vehicle away from any kind of Falcon anomaly.
And you talked a lot about the launch escape system. How exactly is that activated? Is it autonomous? Is it manually activated?
Definitely. So for this system to work as designed, you have to remember that the vehicle could be flying at hundreds or thousands of miles an hour
พูดถึง
through
ระ
the
บบ
lower
หนี
atmosphere.
ออกมาได้อ
So
ยู่
it's really important that it's extremely fast and highly reliable with very low chance of false
ระบบ
positives.
ดีดหนีดีดออกมาจาก
Launch escape system fundamentally is set to look at a set of pre-programmed criteria which are on board the vehicle. Dragon and Falcon are
เป็นระบบ
looking
อัตโนมัตินะ
looking
จะ
for
แยก
normal
ระ
vehicle
หว่าง
dynamics, loss of
ดราก้อนครู
communication
กับ
between critical systems.
จรวดฟอคอน9
Our launch director and chief engineer, who we've heard a lot from today, are capable of sending a manual command to Dragon to initiate a launch escape. And Bob and Doug are also always able to,
เรียก
to
launch
activate the launch escape
escape
handle and
launch
initiate a launch
launch
escape themselves
escape
as well.
system
Now that the system is armed, all of this is currently active on the vehicle.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into it. And we did have an in-flight abort test earlier this year to test this out. Can you tell us what we learned from that test?
เป็นระบบอัตโนมัตินะระบบ
Definitely. It was possibly the most
หนีออกมาจาก
flight-like test of an orbital class booster
ระบบ
in history.
หนี
It was a full
Launch
flight-like
escape
test
system
using a full
Launch
Falcon 9 rocket we had
escape
to knowingly
system
destroy in order to get this fully integrated system. For folks who didn't get a chance to see it, the vehicle followed a normal crew launch trajectory about a minute and a half into flight. We had Dragon autonomously trigger the launch escape system based on a reconfiguration of those.
Can you tell us what we learned from that test?
เป็นระบบนะระบบ
Definitely. It was possibly the most
หนีออกมาจาก
flight-like test of an orbital class booster
ระบบ
in history.
หนี
It was a full
Launch
flight-like
escape
test
system
using a full
Launch
Falcon 9 rocket we had
escape
to knowingly
system
destroy in order operation. It's important to recognize that all of that happens from command to actual separation of the vehicle in under half a second.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much,
คือ
Nick,
ตรง
for
หัว
joining us and talking
หัว
through
จรวด
those
กับไอ้
details
ตรง
with us.
ตรง
Enjoy the
แท้ง
launch today.
แท้งเชื้อ
We're
เพลิง
gonna send
อ่ะ
it back to
มันจะ
KSC
แยกออกจากกัน
Lauren.
ได้ถ้ามันมี
Thank you,
Hey.
Jesse.
Hey,
We
Chukchun.
are about a minute and a half away from
Yeah.
propellant load. At T
What,
minus
yeah.
35 minutes, we should hear the call out on
Yeah.
the nets that
มันจะแยกออกจาก
propellant
ไอ้
load has started.
ไอ้
So
ท่อ
that's
ท่อน
about
จ
a
รวด
minute
ได้
and
ถ้า
13
มันมี
seconds
แบบ
away.
ระบบช่วยหนีมันนะไอ้ตรงหัวนี่มันจะดีดตัวออกมาจะจุดระเบิด
And Lauren, I am getting goosebumps over here.
จุดระเบิด
This is an exciting moment.
มันเป็น
When
จะ
I was
มัน
sitting
จะ
in
มี
the
จรวด
vehicle,
เล็กๆอยู่ตรง
when we
ข้าง
were
ใต้
trying to
เนี่ย
get everything, when all the prop was getting loaded up, I was just going through my crew notebook. I was thinking about,
ถ้ามีอะไรเกิดขึ้นนี่มันจะดีดตัวออกมา
there was a malfunction
เนี่ย
because
จะดี
usually
ดออกมาจาก
everything
ไอ้
goes
ตัว
normally when
แท้
you
ง
fly in space, but
แท้งจรวด
you have to think about the things that you have to take care of. The first steps you have to take care of. And on my mission, I was calling
แล้วมัน
out
ก็จะมีไอ้
port calls like
ชู
if
ชี
we
พ
lost an engine, where
ล่ม
would we
ชู
go
ชีพ
next? And
มันจะเป็นระบบช่วยหนีของ
around the
จรวด
country and around the world. So I think that's what
มัน
those
ก็
guys are
จะ
probably
ปลอด
thinking
ภัย
about
มาก
now, and just really getting ready for this mission to go off.
บอกเทสแล้วเทสอีกจนแน่ใจ
Absolutely.
นะ
And we're just now about 20 seconds from when we expect propellant loading to start. Again, that's fueling of the rocket.
อ๋ออีกครึ่งชั่วโมงฮะ
All right, we're getting close. We should hear that call out any second now on the nets. So let's listen in.
Propellant load has started.
Fantastic. So prop load has started. We've started loading liquid oxygen on stage 1 and stage 2. And yeah, liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene. So now that we are 34 minutes and 42 seconds away from the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011, we know that the launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling. Dragon prop load happened weeks ago, actually just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. And those propellants, which are MMH or monomethyl hydrogen, that's our fuel, and NTO, or nitrogen tetroxide, that's our oxidizer, those not only feed the Draco engines that propel Dragon on orbit, but they also supply those 8 Super Draco engines of the launch escape system. So I have one right here, a little model. Oh, it doesn't come off the stand.
Don't break it, Lauren.
All right, I know, it's very nice. So as you can see, Dragon is actually broken up into 4 quads, and each quad has 2 of the Super Draco engines for a total of 8 of them. And as I mentioned, they are biprop engines. They have MMH and NTO as their oxidizer. Now, most abort systems from past space vehicles, I believe like Soyuz, Mercury, Apollo, they all had a pointy escape tower on top where there was essentially like a mini rocket engine or a series of rocket engines on top. And if they weren't used, that escape tower would have to jettison itself from the vehicle. If it was used, it would be used to lift the vehicle off of the rocket. Well, Dragon is a little bit different in that its escape system is actually integrated into the vehicle, and that's great for a couple of reasons. One less thing you have to jettison on a nominal flight, and so they're pretty dormant, just those throttle valves open unless they're used, and hopefully they never have to be. And yeah, I mean, the other thing that offers you is the ability to escape from the pad all the way to orbit. Because if you jettisoned your escape system prior to that, you couldn't. So yeah. That's little Dragon there.
Again, right. New era, much safer design.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for walking us through that, Lauren. Again, the launch escape system is armed. That protects Bob and Doug so that if something were to go wrong, they can shoot off of the pad away from the rocket and parachute to safety in the ocean. That is such a crucial safety capability. And so now we want to go over to Hawthorne for an operational update with John.
Thanks, Marie. We are counting down those final minutes. Everything is still looking good on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon vehicles for an on-time launch, but weather is trending the wrong way right now. We're keeping our ears open in case we hear that the weather is going to be no-go for the rest of the count. Right now, we are counting down at T-minus 32 minutes.
Stage 1 locks and
Falcon 9
RP1
did
flow rates
begin
are nominal.
propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, right on time. The propellants we use on Falcon 9 are a fuel, which is rocket-grade kerosene, also called RP1, refined petroleum. We use an oxidizer, and that's the super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX as we call it. Those 2 propellants come together, but they don't light, so we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-tub. You might see that just before first stage ignition, or maybe later in the second stage ignition. You get a green colored flame as the T-tub comes out into the oxygen, and that ignites the main engines right before the rocket takes off or the second stage engine lights. Now currently in the fueling, RP1 fuel is about 10% full on the first stage. That's the bottom 2/3 of the stack of the vehicle you can see on the left. The first stage is that long white cylinder at the bottom plus that black cylinder called the inner stage. That's the entire first stage that we're loading with LOX and RP1 kerosene. That's the part that comes back to Earth. The second stage just above it, the white cylinder, and then above that will be the Dragon trunk and the capsule. Now currently the second stage is also loading fuel with RP1. That's about 8% full right now. We are
คือ
loading
จรวด
liquid
ฟอล
oxygen
คอน
on
เนี่
the
ยมัน
first
จะ
stage.
เอามาใช้ได้เขาเรียกอะไร reusable เอากลับมาใช้ได้หลายครั้งนะถ้าเป็นสมัยก่อนนี่คือใช้แล้วทิ้งอะจรวด พอ
Helium
ปล่อย
loading
ขึ้น
is
ไปแล้ว
also
ก็
underway into pressure
ก็
vessels on
ก็
the
เสีย
first
ก็
second
เอามา
stage.
กลับมาใช้ใหม่ไม่ได้
We use that to
แต่
pressurize
แต่
the tanks
ระเบิด
in
ไม่ใช่
flight
จ
as
รวด
propellant
ฟอ
is
ล
being
คอน
pulled
เนี่ย
up by
สา
the
มารถเอา
internal
มา
turbo
รี
pump.
ไซเคิลใช้ใหม่ reuse
Dragon on board the spacecraft. You can see the astronauts are monitoring systems while
มันรี
propellant
ไซ
is
เคิล
loaded
ใช้ได้
into
หลาย
the
รอบ
Falcon 9. Now, when we
Stage 1
flew
cryo-helium load
the
has
first
started.
demo flight last year and then the in-flight escape test earlier this year, the sounds inside the Dragon capsule were recorded. So as part of the training, the sounds of the propellant loading were played back to acclimate the crew to what they're experiencing now. I'm stopping, I'm listening to some discussion on one of the back nets, trying to track where we are with the weather criteria. We're just passing another weather gate right now, trying to see whether or not the conditions are go. In certain situations, when the weather is no go, you have to wait 30 minutes, and we are now inside of 30
ครึ่งชั่ว
minutes.
โมงฮะ
But if the
เดี๋ยว
cloud
ขอ
moves
พัก
away,
กิน
and
น้ำสัก
conditions
10 นาที
improve,
ก่อนฮะ
we
ดู
may be able to continue
เล่น
the countdown for another 14 minutes and reassess. So we're waiting to see whether or not we can continue the count. Currently, we are. The range, they're ready to support with no problems in the air and the sea space area. But again, the weather, that's the one that's looking bad, and we're going to continue to listen. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we're going to have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity on May 30th.
สองนักบินอเมริกันอันนี้เป็นครั้งแรก
Demo 2
ในรอบ
Bob and Doug's
9
flight to
ปีที่
station will take about 19 hours, and their
ที่
journey
ส่ง
is
มนุษย์อวกาศ
very similar to the trip our cargo
ออก
Dragon
ไป
makes back and forth to the International Space Station
จาก
with
ก็
two
เลยแหละ
noticeable differences:
ผืน
docking
แผ่น
and
ดินอเมริ
splashdown.
กา
As we await T-0 in just a little over
ก่อน
20
หน้านี้ก็ต้องไป
minutes from now, ground
จ้างรัส
operations
เซีย
will
ให้
finish
ส่ง
doing
นัก
those
บินอ
final
วกาศขึ้นไป
series of system
ก็คือ
checks,
อเมริกา
making
นี่
sure
ไม่ได้เอา
both Dragon
นัก
and
บิน
Falcon 9
ไม่
are
ได้
ready
พา
for
นักบิน
liftoff,
ขึ้นไปบนอว
and
กาศ
really
มา
keeping an
ประมา
eye
ณ
on that
9
weather.
ปีแล้ว
You're just continuing to get live views
เป็นค
from
รั้ง
the
แรกในรอบ
teams.
9 ปี
You've got Falcon 9 and Dragon on your left, and then Bob and Doug on the right as they prepare at the Cape for liftoff.
Once we hit
ครั้งแรกในรอบ
T0 and a
9 ปี
successful launch occurs, we will
ที่ส่ง
watch
นักบิน
Falcon 9 and
อว
Dragon
กาศ
make their ascent
ขึ้นสู่
until
อว
Falcon
กาศ
9
ของ
and
อเมริ
first
กา
and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the
แต่
space
ว่า
station.
And once it gets
นัก
on
บินอว
orbit,
กาศก็
mission operators will prepare Dragon for
ก่อนหน้านี้ก็
on-orbit
ใช้
operations,
บริการ
where
ของ
Dragon
รัส
will
เซีย
execute a series of burns that are going to gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the International Space Station. And you're seeing some of that track in the animation on your screen.
And first and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the
แต่
space
ว่า
station.
And once it gets
นัก
on
บินอว
orbit,
กาศก็
mission operators will prepare Dragon for
ก่อนหน้านี้ก็
on-orbit
ใช้
operations,
บริการ
where
ของ
Dragon
รัส
will
เซีย
execute a series of burns that are going to gradually raise its
We expect to have an update at about T-20.
อันนี้นักบินอวกาศ อยู่ในแคปซูลละครูดากอนแคปซูล
or scrub at that
ส่วน
time.
ไอตัวถังเชื้อเพลิงนั้นเรียกฟอลคอนไนตัวจรวดเรียก
Okay,
จรวด
Jay,
ฟอล
thanks
คอน
for
ไน
the update. We appreciate it.
ไอตัวหัวนั่นเรียกครูดากอน
I'll give you some more
ไอตัว
words
ที่นักบินอว
about
กาศนั่งอยู่เนี่ยเรียกครูดากอน
Okay, so it
อัน
sounds
นี้
like
อันนี้
we're
นักบิน
gonna
อว
find
กาศ
out
ประจำที่
in
แล้ว
about 6 minutes if we're going to have enough time. And John, I was
อี
referring
ก
to a couple of those
26 นาที
weather
ฮะ
situations
ปล่อย
where
จ
we
รวด
have to have a
ครั้ง
certain
แรก
amount
ใน
of
รอบ
time.
9 ปีของอ
In
เมริ
this
กา
case,
ที่
with
ส่ง
the
มนุ
field
ษย์อว
mills
กาศ
about
ขึ้น
15
ไป
minutes,
วง
so they have until about 16 minutes and 30
ปก
seconds
ติ
to really
จะเป็นรัส
make
เซี
sure
ย
that we're going to have enough time for
ที่
that
ส่ง
to
มนุษย์
dissipate.
อวกาศ
So we're going to be listening for that weather update in just a couple of minutes, but it is going to be a pretty interesting trip uphill for them once they actually get on orbit.
And a very exciting countdown with 6 minutes to figure out if
อันนี้
we
ก็มา
are
ลุ้นว่าจะ
launching today. But targeting back to what we were talking about, next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is a
อันนี้ฟ้า
very
ยัง
different process
ครึ้
from
มๆ
what
อยู่เลย
we've seen
ดู
with
ท้องฟ้า
Dragon
ยัง
cargo
ครึ้มๆอยู่
deliveries in the past, which used a
ดูท้อง
process
ฟ้า
called
ครึ้ม
berthing.
อยู่เลย
Now, berthing requires a spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously,
Stage 2 cryo-helium
เดี๋ยว
load
มา
started.
ขอเวลา 5 นาที
autonomously with no crew aboard the station. It's
25
typically a
นาที
faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism. It's the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules together on board station. It's a little bit slower process than docking, but the hatches are significantly larger than docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up large cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then after Dragon departs the station, it's ready for its trip home. And that'll have deorbit entry and landing and a number of other operations. If you're looking at this animation, it might look like we're playing the one we played originally in reverse, because that's kind of how it goes, but just a little bit quicker. All of the operations following the final departure maneuver will include things like trunk separation, closing that nose cone again, executing a deorbit burn, and once they're inside the atmosphere, deploying drogue and then main parachutes, and then finally splashing down off the Florida coast, at which teams will move in, get Bob and Doug up out of the water, and get them out of the capsule once they're on the boat. So we have 4 minutes now until we get that next expected weather update. Let's go down now to the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. If you're just joining us, we are now T-minus 23 minutes and 48 seconds from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. We're going to find out in less than 4 minutes if the weather looks good for that. And this will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. In fact, we took a poll a little bit earlier to ask you if you had the opportunity to fly to space, would you go? And 86% of those of you watching answered that you would go to space.
That's an incredible number. I think, realizing that you don't have to be a military astronaut or a NASA astronaut to fly in space. You can be a regular civil, just a regular person going off to space on a SpaceX type rocket. So I think that's why the numbers are so high.
Yeah, and we are really thrilled to see all the folks watching along online. I know we certainly hope that that this is a go, but we're going to hear a little bit of a weather update in less than 3 minutes now. And Leland, I know they're waiting for a weather update, and they've come, almost all the way down the count. What do you think Bob and Doug are thinking about right now?
We on SES-129, we were having some weather problems, and I think we were getting close to the countdown, and then it seemed like the sky just cleared up right above our heads. We saw it, and we knew we were going. And we always know that you can have any types of delays, fuel prop delays, all kinds of things that can happen, but we've trained over and over and over again for these types of scenarios. And so we want to be safe. We want to be safe for our families, and we'll do this another day if it doesn't work with the weather.
I love that John I always says weather. It's that thing that everybody talks about, but no one can do anything about it.
I know.
And it is this interesting thing of just, succumbing to Mother Earth. She's going to tell us if we can go or not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens, look at it this way. Bob and Doug got one really great rehearsal in, right?
It's always best to practice and practice and practice, yes.
So again, we're less than 2 minutes now from that weather update that is going to go directly to Bob and Doug, and we will quiet down so we can listen in for that, because I know we can't wait to find out what that is. And those of you watching that have been following along, we are eagerly awaiting to hear whether the weather is going to be a showstopper today.
These clouds can seem really deceiving at times, right? You see the blue skies peeking through and you think everything's fine, but you just don't know. That's why we have those launch weather officers.
Absolutely. And I know, we've talked about it before, but it's not just the weather in Florida that they're looking at. They've got to look at weather downrange. If they were to have an abort in flight and they needed to come down somewhere in the ocean, they need to consider what the weather's like out there, because recovery teams have to go out and get them in a situation like that. So there's so many variables, and that's why not just with this flight, but with every human space flight we've had in the past, there's always a very good chance of a scrub, because you do have so much criteria. that you have to meet. And we're going to listen in now. We're just seconds away from a weather update.
Stage 2, RP1 load complete.
That is liquid oxygen you see venting off the rocket. That's completely normal and expected. We're standing by for a weather update.
Unless you can give us another 10 minutes, I don't think we're going to get there with any of the rules today.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
I mean, another 10 minutes past T0.
Oh,
1640, 1645 local. I think we'll probably be clear on all the rules, but not quite going to make it for this.
Okay. We're going to check back in with you in about 2 minutes, and then I'll call it up at about T-minus 17 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's some of them are starting to count down, but we still have one above 2,000. So if that gets below,
And that didn't sound great right there. That was the weather net going out, but we're still standing by for a final decision. And we're going to continue to listen in for an update, but in the meantime, we're going to go over to John Insprucker at SpaceX headquarters in California. John?
And Dragon SpaceX on weather. We're still
T-minus 18 minutes and counting.
LD is
we are still red
some
on weather.
discussions. Expect an update from LD.
We're waiting in about another minute for one final check with weather. We're going to check at T-minus 17 minutes possibly. We don't really expect that things will have improved. The weather officer was not optimistic that the weather would clear up that rapidly. We did hear the launch director, Mike Taylor, joke that, you know, if we could move 10 more minutes past the T0, weather conditions may improve, but Mike was not able to do that. We have an instantaneous window today. So at 17 minutes, we want to make that call because shortly after that, we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
We continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We go ahead and end today's launch attempt. Launch control. Go ahead and end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please.
Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100. It was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy all.
We've heard the call from the crew. They have been informed. Launch director Mike Taylor has called a scrub for the day, and we got the feedback when the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug. They said we gave it a good try, but they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like at T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds. The launch automatic sequence that controls the Falcon 9, the loading of propellants, the cycling of valves, that is also stopped. We now proceed into what is a normal scrub sequence for us. We practice this every launch. So now we move into safely taking the propellants, the pressurization gases back off the first and second stages. As things get into a safe configuration, then we will disarm the escape system on Dragon, and we'll bring the crew access arm back around the spacecraft.
The
So right now, we got down to just inside 17 minutes. The hardware was working very well on both Dragon and spacecraft. We had the fuel loading going on. We had liquid oxygen loading going on, everything but second stage. And the weather just needed a little bit more time to clear the conditions. We didn't have that time because we had an instantaneous window. And so with that, SpaceX launch director had to call upon the input from weather.
Dragon, copies
had to
all,
call
about 30
a
minutes.
scrub
Thank
for
you,
the
bye.
day per the safety rules that we have for this flight. So right now the team is undergoing the post-scrub operations on both Dragon as well as Falcon 9, working with the range. No issues being reported right now as we start to go through that sequence. Everything looks good. And Dan, we had a good webcast going here until the very end. So you know, we'll look at it as now we've had another great dry rehearsal. Last Saturday we did a dry one, I should say, and today we've done a wet dress rehearsal. But sorry, we just couldn't get there, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John I. And obviously we can't control the weather. We came right down to the wire there, hoping we could just squeeze in between those cloud systems to get a launch today, but it wasn't to be. But it doesn't mean we're done. We're going to have another attempt coming up in just 3 days, so we're going to be doing this all over again essentially on Saturday, on the 30th, and that launch attempt is going to be coming at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time, so a little bit earlier in the day. It's going to look largely the same to everything that we saw today, with the crew waking up, going through suit up, making their way to the pad. So we're gonna feel a lot of deja vu, I think, on Saturday.
Yep. But still exciting. Safety is always first, so if weather was not there for us today, hopefully Saturday it will be there for us and we will have a safe launch on Saturday.
Yeah, the initial weather report still had us at about, I think, a 40% possibility of violation. So weather a little bit better, but we're still going to be kind of rolling the dice. It is Florida in the spring and summer, so storms are always a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
One of the good things, though, the vehicle appeared to be in great health throughout the day, both Dragon and Falcon 9, so we didn't have to scrub for any technical issue. We're going to continue and follow along with Bob and Doug until they're out of that capsule, as again, they had started loading fuel onto the Falcon 9 rocket, so they'll have to wait until all that fuel comes off. They'll disarm the launch escape system, which still stays armed because they're still sitting on a partially loaded rocket. And then once they're able to disarm that launch escape system, the crew arm will swing back out. They'll make their way once again back the way they came, and then it'll be back to crew quarters for Bob and Doug for a few more days.
คือยกเลิกบอกอากาศไม่เป็นใจ
But if you're just now tuning in, wondering why we're not still counting down, we did have a launch scrub today. We were just a little under
Stage
17
1 LOX
minutes.
and fuel flow rates are nominal for offload. Expecting about a 40-minute offload time.
เลื่อนไป
So that call out the liquid oxygen fuel pumping out of the first stage of the Falcon 9. Everything looking good with that. Expecting about 40 minutes for all that fuel to come off. So again, once that fuel comes off, Bob and Doug will be able to disarm the launch escape system. Disarm will swing back out. They'll be able to make their way back down.
สรุปคือไม่ได้ปล่อยวันนี้
Unfortunate scrub today because of weather. That was the one thing we were tracking from the
สภาพอากาศไม่ดี
today. Watching Bob and Doug get
ยกเลิกต้องยกเลิกการปล่อย
we did abort today's launch or scrub today's launch with a little under 17 minutes to go until our T0 time, which was 4:33.
ปล่อยทีวันเสาร์
So that's going to move us to our next attempt, which is coming up on Saturday. That time is going to be 3:22 p.m. Eastern time, so a little bit earlier in the day for Bob and Doug and for everybody else watching around the world. They're still going to have a 19-hour flight to station if that's when we launch. And a lot of the stuff that we saw today is going to look very similar, but we're just going to have to try again, cross our fingers, hope for a little bit better weather the next time.
อากาศไม่ดีวันนี้ปล่อยจรวดไม่ได้
We do track everything all the way down to T0 to make sure that everything is go, making sure that the range is go, weather is go. So this is standard procedure. We always tend to make sure that we have a backup day, launch day, in case we do have scrubs like today. So this is pretty normal and standard. Nothing to be worried about. Again, we do this for the safety of our vehicles as well as today we have astronauts on our vehicle. So even bigger reason for us to make sure that we have safe weather for them to fly.
And just a reminder for everyone still tuned in, it takes about 40 minutes for all of this propellant to come off of the Falcon 9. And while it is offloading that launch escape system on Dragon, which is designed to pull the capsule away if there's any issue with the rocket or anything on the pad, that is still armed. So we're going to continue to stay with this until all the propellant's off, and then we'll see the launch escape system get disarmed. Bob and Doug will be able to open up their visors again. The launch crew access arm will swing back out and link up with Dragon, and they'll make their way off and then down the tower at the pad. But if you're just now tuning in, no launch today. We did have to scrub because of weather. We're going to be moving to our second attempt on Saturday, just a little bit earlier in the afternoon. Just going to continue to stand by as this propellant comes off. We heard a call that everything was going nominally or as expected so far. And then once all the propellant's off, we should see Bob and Doug make their way out of Dragon shortly after.
สรุปคือยกเลิกวันนี้นะครับท้องฟ้าไม่เป็นใจยกเลิกไปก่อน
And what you're seeing on your screen is a live view of Bob and Doug on the right side inside of Dragon as they're waiting for propellant to be removed from the vehicle so that it is safe for them to disarm the launch escape system.
บ๊อบเบนเคนกับดักลาสเฮอร์รี่นักบินอวกาศ
And this will take a bit of time, so we are going to stay live with you to watch this as they exit the vehicle eventually and come down from standing down on launch today.
Up until the point of the scrub, we had a really clean
วันเสาร์น่าจะ
tracking any issues
ปล่อย
with
เร็วขึ้นกว่าเดิม
spacecraft, so always a good thing to see. We did have to scrub because of that weather. To be a little bit more specific, we were still in violation of one of the weather criteria. It was the strength of electric fields in the atmosphere that the 45th Space Wing and other weather operators are monitoring around the launch pad. And that's one of those rules where we need a certain amount of time if we're in a violation. In this case,
nominal, roughly 50% on stage 1 LOX and fuel, 85% on stage 2 fuel.
ตีหนึ่งบ้านเราอยู่นู่นก็ตีหนึ่งบ้านเราก็เป็นวันอาทิตย์อเมริกาก็วันเสาร์
that launch weather constraint, and since we do have an instantaneous launch window today, we weren't able to make it. So we hope for better weather coming up on Saturday, where again our next launch attempt is going to be at 3:22 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be able to go through everything. I mean, we saw them get suited up. They had a great ride out to the pad. All of their initial checks on both the suits with pressure checks and communication checks went well. Able to get the Dragon hatch closed, the launch escape system arm, and Falcon 9 started its fueling. Just not
บ่ายสามนู่นก็ตีสองนี่อยู่ฟลอริดา
And as John I said earlier, it was just another great rehearsal today. I don't think you can get enough practice doing this. So when Saturday comes, or when the day that we can actually launch the vehicle, Bob and Doug and the NASA and SpaceX team are fully prepared with just an extra rehearsal on the belt now.
ก็บอกว่าถือว่าเป็นการซ้อมใหญ่
The weather is a lot more complex for launching humans. You have some more stringent requirements in place, not only around the pad, but in the case of this launch today, we were also looking at whether the entire ascent corridor, as we call it, so basically the entire way that they were flying up the east coast of the United States in this launch today, we're monitoring that weather because those are areas that if they have an ascent coming off of the Falcon 9 while they're flying into space, we have to make sure that conditions are good in the sea states around those areas, just so they're not going to be landing in the middle of a hurricane, which we did have a tropical storm forming right off the coast of South Carolina today, just to help complicate things a little bit.
And people might be asking, if we knew the weather was going to be a little iffy today, why continue to count down? Well, that is the reason why we do all these checks all the way to countdown. In Florida, the weather is, pretty sporadic. Sometimes a thunderstorm or hurricane will pass through. Within 20 minutes, it's gone, and we could have clear skies for a safe launch. So we continued as scheduled. Standard procedure again to just continue to monitor weather all the way down to the last minutes of the count, and we see what happens. So today, unfortunately, we did scrub for weather, but we will attempt again this Saturday on May 30th.
This Saturday, May 30th.
And Dan, Jesse, a couple of things to add on there. Right now we are 11 minutes after the scrub was called. Liquid oxygen and fuel are coming off of the first stage. Hard to tell from the view. It's still a little misty around the tank because there's locks on board. But we're between half and a third of each of the fuel and LOX tanks filled on the first stage. So propellant coming out right per plan. The second stage fuel tank is offloading. That's going slower, but it's also a smaller tank. It doesn't take very long to either load it or to offload it. The other thing that we're working on is the high pressure helium spheres as well as the nitrogen spheres for the landing leg system. The pressure will be brought down on those, eventually getting it down low enough to where people can re-enter the pad area. So right now the team is preparing, once they get a permission, the SpaceX ingress-egress technician team will come back inside the caution area around the pad, make their way up when conditions are right, open up the hatch and assist the astronauts out of the Dragon. I'd like to point out that for those who are wondering whether or not, having gone through this, putting propellant, pressurization gases on, getting fairly close to launch, whether that has done anything to wear out the Falcon 9 or the Dragon, the answer is no. If you can recall, the Falcon 9 is designed for at least 10 flights, and about time we get up to a 10th flight, we'll be doing testing to find that we probably got enough margin to continue keep flying. So this is the very first flight of a new first stage and a new second stage. So we haven't even gotten through the first flight. And in all of our margin calculations, we also take into account the fact that we may scrub a launch. So even today's operation, where we have pressurized and we have stressed the vehicle a little bit, that's taken into account in our design and our qualification testing. The other good thing is that the most stressing part of the flight for the Falcon 9 on the first stage is the re-entry. So we didn't even get through that. So we're sitting here on the pad. It's a fairly straightforward situation and not stressing on the Falcon 9. And on the Dragon spacecraft, with the human rating factors to carry crew, there is enough factors of safety, margins of safety, redundancy, that just having 2 people on board and closing the hatch and even pressurizing the propellant system does not eat into the margins of the
Offloads
vehicle.
continue nominally 30% on stage 1
So
launch,
right now everything's continuing to
stage
offload.
1
The automatic sequences that we use routinely,
นี่ถ่าย
both
ถ่าย
at
เชื้อ
the
เพลิงออก
launch sites, Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral,
Offload
even
เชื้อ
Vandenberg
เพลิ
Air
ง
Force Base, as well as in our Texas test site for first and second stage. Those sequences are running. Propellant is coming off of the vehicle per plan.
จรวดที่
And we see Bob and Doug up in the Dragon
เดี๋ยว
spacecraft.
ตามแผนนี่
Just
ต้อง
waiting when we can get up there, open the hatch, and
ต้อง
help
ส่ง
them
อีก
egress and come on back down the tower.
4
And
ค
the
น
other thought I had, Dan and Jesse, is right now we are coming up on what would have been T0. And I'm wondering 10 minutes from now
ตามแผนรู้สึก
whether
ว่าจะ
the weather officer
ต้องส่ง
would turn
นั่ง
around
ได้
and say,
4 คนนะ
yes,
จรวด
it turned good.
บู
You
ดา
just
ก้อน
didn't have a long enough window. We only
ทำ
had
ที่นั่ง
1
ไว้
second
4
and
คน
we needed 10 minutes.
แต่ว่า
So
อันนี้ครั้ง
we'll have to
รอบ
ask
แรกก็ส่งไป
offline and
2 คน
say, hey, did the weather conditions improve? And one thing I'll
แต่ถ้า
tag
ทำแบบ
on to
เต็ม
that
ที่
Dan
เลยจะ
was mentioning and Jesse were talking
จะ
about
ขึ้นไปได้
launch
7 คน
opportunities. The launch window does move earlier on Saturday a little bit. So it just happened to be Orbital Dynamics said
แต่
today
รอบแรกนี่ส่งไป
if you
สอง
want
คน
to go
ก่อ
to
น
the International Space Station and you want to launch northeast, which is the approved trajectory, you have to go right at 4:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You pick another day, the T0 moves. It's just luck of the draw. We might have been doing this at 8 in the morning when we were getting lightning, or we could have been doing it a few hours from now when conditions may have been acceptable. So in the end, we can all look at Isaac Newton and Johannes Kepler for orbital dynamics telling us when do we launch, and that stuck us right in the middle of a period of bad weather. So there's my science lesson for today, Dan and Jesse.
Appreciate that, John. That helps soften the blow of just moving past that T-0 time. But for anybody, if you're just now tuning in, wondering why Falcon 9 is still sitting there on the pad as we move past that T0, we did have a scrub for weather today, just not able to clear all of those constraints. We keep a very close eye on the weather around the pad and their whole way
Dragon
uphill.
SpaceX for weather.
ไอ้ดากอนครูแคปซูลนี่จริงๆมี7ที่นั่งฮะแต่รอบนี้
Right now,
ส่ง
Bob
ไป
and Doug are
สอง
still
คน
inside
Dragon, go ahead for weather.
นั่งจริงนั่ง
Yeah,
ไป
I just
7
wanted to give you some more words on the scrub rationale. Yeah, so we basically scrubbed due to 3 rules that we were violating. All 3 would have been expected to clear 10 minutes after our T0
อัน
time.
นี้วันนี้ไม่ได้ปล่อย
And
แล้ว
those
ฮะ
3 were
อา
natural
กาศ
lightning,
ท้องฟ้าไม่เปิด
field mills, and the attached
เลื่อน
envelope.
เลื่อนไปเป็นวันเสาร์ตอนตี 2:20 ของบ้านเราก็เป็นวันอาทิตย์
Yeah, we copy, Jay. We appreciate that update. We
อยู่นู่นก็
can see some raindrops on the
วัน
windows.
เสาร์
And,
ที่
just figured that
30 บ่าย 3:20
whatever it was too close to the launch pad at the time we needed it not to be. So we appreciate that. Understand that everybody's probably a little bit bummed out. It's just part of the deal. Everybody was ready today, and we appreciate that. And the ship was great. And we'll do it again, I think, on Saturday.
วันเสาร์
Copy all. And yeah, we concur. And appreciate your resilience sitting there in the vehicle for us.
วันนี้ท้องฟ้าไม่เป็นใจ
We got the easy job.
แยกย้าย
Nothing better than being prime crew on a new spaceship.
Copy that.
All right, some great words from Bob and Doug.
And,
They're
I think
feeling good inside Dragon. They'll be ready to go when we make our next
Copy
attempt
all.
on Saturday. Right now, we're just still waiting for all of the fuel to come off the Falcon 9 rocket. After
Stage 1
that,
locks and
อันนี้
fuel
เรา
20%.
คงต้อง
Stage 2 fuel 30.
แยกย้ายกันไปนอนก่อน
and so that call right there, we're still at a little over 20% on fuel, RP1, and LOX, liquid oxygen on the first stage, and then at about 26% on RP1 on that second stage. So again, it takes about 40 minutes once the process starts, so we should have right around 30 minutes or so until all that fuel's off. And then the crew will get to go to disarm the launch escape system. We'll see that crew access arm swing back into place, and they can begin to egress or get out of the Dragon spacecraft.
นี่เขารอถ่ายเชื้อเพลิงออกจากจรวดก่อน
You heard it live, that weather update of what we violated. We were just 10 minutes off, unfortunately, but again, today was an instantaneous launch. And as John explained, it's due to the orbital mechanics and making sure that at the time we launch, it will allow us to get to the space station on time and accurately.
แยกย้าย
So you can see on your right screen, Bob and Doug are patiently waiting. They do still have their visors on and still strapped into their seats. The launch escape system is still armed right now as we are offloading fuel and will not disarm until prop offload is complete. And this is just to ensure the safety of Bob and Doug and make sure that they can egress safely from the rocket.
And just a reminder, today, just this first attempt, we're going to be right back here looking like on Saturday for attempt number 2. Launch America is not going anywhere. Still on the track to get Bob and Doug into space, get this Crew Dragon up to the International Space Station. So it's always good. If you're gonna scrub, probably rather scrub for weather than an issue on either Falcon 9 or Dragon. And we weren't tracking any issues with the flight systems throughout our countdown today. Everything passed with leak checks on the hatches and the crew suits. All the communications working great. All the teams were ready to go. So as John and I said, always nice to have a little bit more practice, and we'll be right back at it on Saturday.
What would this launch be if it wasn't even more exciting to try and launch today, and now we have to push it to Saturday?
Really got to build the suspense.
Yes. So.
ครับแยกย้าย
Hey, Dan and Jesse, another thought crossed my mind while I'm watching.
รอไปดูวันเสาร์อีกทีหนึง
Showing fuel is just about off. First and second stage were down under 10%. LOX is also just about off of
Stage 1 LOX is
first
under
stage.
10%.